Hello sales freaks, it's Aiden here, and I make these videos to capture lightning in a bottle. Now it's important to remember nothing happens in our economy until a sale is made. Today I have the pleasure of showing you Tibor Shanto, the sales professional who says execution is everything. Enjoy.
You know, the other thing with questions, if you think about it from a sales perspective, questions are really the instrument of the trade for salespeople. So as a sales professional, you want to make sure that you have a variety of instruments that you can use for the right situation and understanding which questions are best suited to each situation. So one thing that I find interesting is over the last few years, there's been a great emphasis on open-ended questions. It seems to be the fashionable thing. And really, if you look about it from the mid-90s on, closed-ended questions have really had a bad rap, and everybody's like, oh, you don't want to ask closed-ended questions, you have to ask open-ended questions. But I think that that's a bit of a misnomer. So much as Justin Timberlake is trying to bring sexy back on a mission to try and bring back closed-ended questions, because in certain situations, closed-ended questions make sense. In other situations, open-ended questions make sense. And I think the issue was that salespeople tended to ask too many closed-ended questions, and as a result of that, they weren't getting the things that they were trying to get out of the customer. And so there was this trend or movement over to open-ended questions. But there are times when you do want to open up the customer, so open-ended questions make sense. But there are times when it makes sense for you and the customer to really drill down and inspect a particular thing, and you really want to get down to a particular answer. And in those instances, closed-ended questions make a lot more sense. So in our programs, I tend to teach a format called impact questions because it really is in all the marketing and the packaging. And it's interesting, when you call it an impact questions, people buy into it and they go, wow, impact question. If you look at it and you remove the packaging and the latest marketing, what's underneath an impact question is really a closed-ended question. But the aspect or the thing that it raises has such great impact on moving the sale forward or helping both parties decide that maybe now's not the time to engage, that people overlook the fact that it is a closed-ended question and they buy into the fact that it is an impact question, which I guess in itself is a testament to selling. So in the end, what I want people to take away is that open-ended questions are great for a lot of different situations, and closed-ended questions are great for other types of situations. The key is really understanding where you are with the customer, what makes sense, and then bringing that right instrument to bear. And whether you call it a closed-ended question or whether you call it an impact question, it is the question that's going to move the sale forward or help you understand why the sale is not happening.
You know, on a daily basis, I get what seems to be dozens of emails, articles, and blog posts directly into my inbox dealing with sales. And you know, some of them I actually subscribe to. So what I do, which I don't think is different than many, is look at the subject line to differentiate those that I want to read now and those that make for later reading, you know, sometime next summer. So it was with a piece that came in a little while back that had something to the effect in the subject line of sales is not being a numbers game. And I always thought that those who tell you that sales is not a numbers game seems to be the refrain of those people who want to avoid measuring things, who want to avoid the accountability that comes with measurement. So I read the article, and I have to tell you it was quite good. It dealt in great detail with quality over quantity, how those people who deal with quality prospects will tend to work with less prospects to make their quota. But it didn't really deal with the numbers aspect of things. Again, it dealt with dealing with less prospects, which is a number. It talked about quota, which I think is interesting because if you think about it, what is your quota? What is your target, your goal? It's a number. You're giving it in either a revenue form, a percentage form, or some form of units that you have to sell. So right there is a number, and that's the number that drives everything. Now, even those same people who are focusing on quality over quantity, well, how do they know? They need to measure some things, and measurement becomes an element of numbers. They need to understand that in order to get a sale, how many real prospects do they have to deal with? How many real proposals do they have to generate? To get to that, how many people will they have to engage with? All of these are driven by numbers and understanding your numbers. Much like if you're an athlete, you want to understand if you're going to run the 100 meters faster, what elements of your game are you going to have to change? And that's where the quality over quantity comes in, but you still need to get measured. And again, when you're giving your quota, again, it is a number. It's not that you're told to go out and deal with a set of quality prospects. You're told to go out and deliver specific results measured by numbers. Again, with those numbers, knowing what your conversion rates are, you can then be proactively managing how much time you allocate to different activities. And again, time comes down to an element of numbers. So once again, I'd like to propose that those people who will tell you that it's not a numbers game are really looking for you to live in the area of subjectivity. And I think when it comes to sales, and more importantly, sales success, we need to deal with things that are objectives, things that could be measured, and as a result of that measurement, they could be impacted. And I think that anybody that tells you that sales is not a numbers game is either missing the point or is pandering to that segment of the audience, some 46% of B2B salespeople who are not making their numbers.
One of the things that happens when you bomb around LinkedIn is you're often drawn into discussions, especially about things that you feel strongly about. In my case, sales and a specific element of sales, and in this case, preparation. The discussion was about how this meeting completely fell apart because there were wrong things said by both parties, and as a result of that, there was just no opportunity to recover. And there were all kind of rationalizations about the people involved, the personalities, and they should have known better, and whatever the case might be. But when I asked the question, did you prep the people involved, I've yet to get an answer. And I think often when things don't turn out the way that you want them to, it's a result of a lack of preparation. Just because I'm prepared as a salesperson doesn't mean that everybody else involved in that meeting is prepared. And if they're not prepared, I may not get the next step that I want. So it's my job, your job, to prepare for these things, to prepare an agenda, to get the agenda out, to make sure that the agenda items are agreed to make sure that everybody in the meeting sticks to the agenda. And if you're going to take an executive, and I've played the role of this suit a number of times, prep them because they serve a purpose. And if you want them to achieve that purpose, you have to prep them. If you think they're just going to show up with their tie and smile, that's all you're going to get out of the meeting. So preparation, I've talked about this before. If you go through my blog, I continue to be surprised that we as salespeople keep talking about athletes, yet the one thing we don't emulate is their discipline to practice, 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 and prepare. They spend 2 weeks on the field every Sunday, yet they prepare all week. We could learn from that in sales. So to do that, I'm going to take the weekend off. You have a Memorial weekend down in the States. We have an opportunity to get things done on Monday up here in Canada, but I'm going to take the long weekend off for you. And I'm going to suggest that you spend that weekend enjoying yourself, enjoying the sunshine, but spending time preparing mentally and physically to go back in and grab your share of the pie that's about to come. So prepare in a number of different ways, both physical, mental, and in understanding what some business realities your clients are going to do.
You know, change is hard at the best of times, but it's that much more difficult when it's thrust.
Hello, Aidan Wright with Janitorial Marketing Solutions. We are a lead generation prospecting company for the janitorial sector. Now, what does that mean? It means we create awareness or one-to-many prospecting and marketing campaigns on your behalf. Prospecting is more one-to-one, where we then take that awareness and create engagement and relationships to drive meetings for you and your sales team. So click the link below for more information.
On you the way it has been in the first half of 2020 on most of us. And when you're forced to change, it becomes that much more difficult. But one of the challenges with change, or one of the mistakes that people make when it comes to change, is they try to pile on new things that they want to do. The difficulty is you only have so much capacity in a day to get things done. You only have so much bandwidth in your head to do those things. So the first thing you should actually do is, rather than think about what you're going to do, is actually make a list of things that you're going to stop doing, things that are not serving you well now, things that if you step back and looked at it in the context of a deal or context of a meeting, you'll realize that they're not serving their purpose now, and you're just doing them because they're routine, they're habit. 40% of things we do out of habit. So if you want to create true change that's going to last and have an impact on your pipeline, on your performance, on your execution, the first thing you need to do is to stop doing things. And to do that, get a list ready, put that list together in terms of things that you want to stop, hit it one at a time. You're not going to be able to do all these things at once. And build the process of creating a little bit of bandwidth, a little bit of space so you can introduce new things, without causing stress to the rest of your system. So stop, make a list, and decide what you're going to stop doing first before you start thinking about what you're going to start doing.
Earlier this week, I did a post about how salespeople are always trying to drive urgency in their deals, but fail to do so because they avoid the very thing that could help them do that, which is direct and difficult questions that get the prospect to think. And once they're thinking, they're more likely to take action. But if you don't provoke that thought process, then the deals are going to stretch out. The link is in the comments below. Take a look for the background on the article. But it does beg the question as to why this obsession with urgency, this obsession with shortening sales cycles and so on. And it always comes down to time, and generally the obsession around shortening the sales cycles or urgency is trying to drive those deals a lot earlier. I get it, interesting strategy. But wouldn't it be a better strategy if you actually had sufficient prospects in your pipeline? Because if you had a lot of prospects in your pipeline, you wouldn't feel that pressure, that sense of urgency. If your close ratio was 4-to-1 and you had 6-to-1 opportunities in your pipeline, you wouldn't care if one slipped away. You wouldn't care if one stretched out. But if your close ratio is 4-to-1 and it's only a few weeks to the end of the quarter and you've only got 3 viable opportunities in your pipeline, it's like the Monty Python movie, everyone is sacred. So rather than trying to be urgent all the time and putting all that pressure on yourself, why don't you turn the valve off and turn on your prospecting skills and prospect a little bit more? And what you'll find is that the more prospects you have in your pipeline, the less urgency there is on your part, the more you'll be able to select the right prospects to work with, and the less pressure there'll be on your day-to-day. You know, it's always been true that the best salespeople are multilingual. They know how to speak to different people in the hierarchy of an organization or the hierarchy of a decision in a language that each of those individuals will understand. They're also able to speak to different people in the same function across different geographies. For instance, in North America, we call it net income. In the UK, they call it turnover. So if you want somebody to understand you in the UK, you might as well speak in a language that they speak. But there's another set of languages that salespeople don't deploy that if they did, they could actually improve their sales, take some of the friction out, whichever element you were looking to improve. And that is how you speak to a prospect versus a buyer. And in fact, you can split that up into 3 groups. And if we borrow from marketing, people who are in awareness, consideration, and decision. 3 different groups, 3 different people looking at the world in entirely different lenses, and therefore requiring that we speak to them in different languages. Yet most salespeople tend to approach everybody as though they were speaking one uniform language throughout the planet, throughout the universe. Well, they're not, and if you're wondering why you're missing out on deals that you should have had, maybe it is because you're speaking the wrong language to the wrong person. Because if you're speaking buyer to a prospect, you're never going to connect. So make sure that you're speaking the right language to the right person at the right time, in the right order within the decision. One of the things I like about my role is that not only do I get to prospect, but I'm often prospected. So I get to experience what a lot of customers experience, either using my technique or more often I get to experience other people's techniques. One that comes up regularly, and it's really funny because it comes up about twice a month, is I'll get a slew of salespeople who want to connect with me on LinkedIn. And when you look at their companies, there's really little reason for us to connect, other than maybe they want me to train their company, but they should have called instead of connecting on LinkedIn. But other than that, there's really no reason for us to connect. But what I suggest to salespeople that I work with is walk through your flow all the way to the end and try and see it from the customer's point of view. What does it look like coming at the customer as opposed to what it looks like as you're sending it off from the back end? And what you'll notice is that this pattern begins to really irritate customers, at least me. Because when you look at these slew of salespeople who are connecting with me on LinkedIn for no reason at all, other than the fact that some instructor or some blog post said that they need to spend an hour a day connecting with thought leaders in a particular industry. And seeing that most of these people are SDRs in some sweatshop in Eastern Europe, I can see why they're connecting with me because somebody told them to. And I look at these people, and on the one hand, I understand what they're doing. On the other hand, I question whether they're actually getting what they want out of this exercise. I regularly take these people and I upload them into Sales for Life Haven and let them exist among themselves. Because in the real world, connecting with someone without any follow through, like none of these people do, not one of them has ever commented on a post I've had, reached out in any way. And when I reach out to them to welcome them to my network, I get nothing but bupkis. So if you're going to do things, make sure that it has the effect at the other end that you think it has, or that the instructor suggested to you that it has. Because what you'll find is often it doesn't. And the best way to prevent that is go and talk to some people who are similar to the ones that you're going to prospect and ask them if this will actually work for them. Because what you'll find most of the time, it looks good in the book, but it doesn't work in real